want to dive into the community parts because we are talking about that ecosystem, and so like between the college years that you referred to and 2007 with OSCON, did you ever get in touch with the open source groups, communities who were working on the tools and the software that you were using, or was that starting at 2007 when you got more involved in the ecosystem and not just as being a user and someone who's aware of it, but someone who's being active?
That's a very good question. I was quite literally in Latvia at the time, and I had to find my people. I just had to, and luckily, uh, Laka, the association, was getting on its feet. Uh, Latvia's Atvērta koda asociācija, the open source, open code association, and that would have been around 2004, I believe, and that was my formative listening years, reading mailing list discussions, figuring out what's going on, because again, that enigma of all things free software is so large and such a fire hose, as you know, as anyone on a few mailing lists knows. It's like it's a full-time job just to follow a single project's mailing list if you want to do that, all of which is volunteer for the most part. So um, it was my orientation, if you will, and that's where things like FOSDEM and Linux Tag in Berlin, which I believe is no longer happening, were very useful. I gave my very first conference talk in Strasbourg at EuroBSDCon 2007, urged by a colleague who was a lot more in academia, and I haven't stopped giving talks since. And my actual track record since lockdown has been nearly every BSDCon because I always have something to say. You can check out those talks separately. But I think we all go through a natural progression of being the silent user, then being the user who asks questions, to then the user who hopefully reports a bug, to eventually perhaps a contributor. And then you find yourself at, say, BSD cons, as we call them. There's typically Asia BSD con in the spring, in Ottawa in early summer, May, June is BSD can, and then rotating around European countries is EuroBSD con. You find yourself 20 something years on doing the fundraising for one and the helping the audio video team for another and just getting involved, and then finding that the conferences are so busy you don't get to say hello to everyone, whereas once upon a time you didn't think to actually get the courage to talk to anybody. So that was my formative time, and only come '07-ish did I have a grasp on where there truly were tangible gaps. And like, here's a project at the time with GCC licensing going to GPLv3, the OpenBSD folks had interest in the portable C compiler. It checked boxes for a clean, simple, auditable compiler that didn't focus on exotic additional languages or extreme optimization or all the zillion things that can be in a compiler. So I helped raise money to bring the GCC compiler to a 1.0 status with this newfangled AMD 64 support, which was not a thing. I mean, 32-bit was all we had, and prior to that, 16 and you name it, 8-bit. So that just had such a good resonating response from folks. And then I think the Linux Fund and BSD Fund pages are still open. You can see quite literally what I did. I made the page, I led most of the projects, and uh, that was just a fantastic way to engage with individual contributors and say, hey, we like what you're doing. Can you come up with a laundry list of the items that would bring it to the next level of release? Everyone knows it's missing feature A, B, and C. Well, okay, what would it take? Can you take a little sabbatical to produce that? And that's largely been really successful as an approach. and it's extremely efficient. I mean, another little soapbox item on public benefit nonprofits is that many around the world of every kind are struggling to achieve a 70% programming to 30% overhead balance. Whereas if you're organizing an event and a company is willing to just play bank, they do it extremely efficiently, money in, money out, and they'll probably support you some. So no one is stressing about that overhead that is maintained 24/7 for what could be a 1 week event, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all been very, very educational on that.